Welcome, my name is Chris Scotes. I'm the director of the University Art Museum, and I'm here today with Alex McDowell, production designer, advisory board member at the University Art Museum, and co-director with me on the 5D conference that we're currently organizing. The conference will take place at the Carpenter Center here on campus, October 4th and 5th, and it promises to be an amazing weekend full of incredible panels and workshops. And what we'd like to do today is talk to Alex about his career, his work in production design and music video, and then we'll talk more specifically about the conference itself. So,
okay.
Alex, let's talk about your early career. I mean, you started out making, you were an artist. You went to study fine art, right, as a painter?
Yeah, I trained as a painter at Central in London, Central School of Art in London.
Right.
And really a series of accidents has been my whole career. I was in London I went to school in 74, I was there in 76, 77.
Which was a big year.
Which was a big year.
1977 was a big year in the music industry. And
yeah, in 1976 I was running the student union, the sort of entertainment portion, and someone walked in off the street and said, did I want a band to play for free tomorrow night? And I said, sure, you know, as one does, student. And so the next night, the Sex Pistols did their first gig at our school. I went that night to see them at St. Martin's, which was the rival school across the road, and they were thrown off the stage by the band they were supporting. And so actually it turned out that we staged the first ever Sex Pistols concert at Central School, and so I kind of got involved, and then pretty much, and sort of over-dramatically, my life kind of changed overnight.
then you started a graphic design company called Rocking Russian, right?
I did. I started actually, first of all, printing T-shirts, working with the Pistols, printing T-shirts, taking some photographs, sort of as a general kind of design gopher for them. And out of that came a relationship with the band, and specifically Glenn Matlock, who left the Sex Pistols, started his own band and wanted record sleeves designed. And so he subsidized the first version of my graphics company. It was called Rocking Russian Design. Mm-hmm. And we just started designing record sleeves without knowing what the hell we were doing.
And who did you design for? You did Iggy Pop, right?
Eventually Iggy Pop, from the Pistols to a wide range of people. We started, from the Rich Kids, was Glenn Matlock's band. Right. Susie and the Banshees, a band called The Scars, who were contemporary of U2 and didn't go quite the same route. But just a string of different people. There were probably 4 or 5 designers working contemporary. All of us working directly with the bands. The record companies really didn't know what to make of it, so we started forming very close relationships with a lot of bands. And out of that came, first of all, the record sleeve and the general packaging of this new kind of very street-based punk aesthetic. So there was really a matter of almost establishing yourself as part of a social scene rather than being a very good designer, which I certainly wasn't. But eventually, Glenn Matlock recommended me to Iggy Pop, and Iggy Pop, at some point in a designing of a campaign for him, asked us if we knew anyone who made music videos. Yeah, right. And from that, and we basically said, shh, we'll do it. And then I scrambled around trying to find out what that really meant. And we hired a photographer to be the cinematographer, and I had a friend who was a director, and we pretty much put it together with Iggy inside a fridge, singing dog food. Right. And wow. The rest is history. And really from then on I started doing a combination of music videos and record sleeves.
And obviously the natural progression from music videos and record sleeves then led into, I know this is a bit of a broad jump, but into the film industry. So maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about how you made the transition from working on videos. I know you worked with Iggy Pop on the video, but then you did something with Everything But the Girl. Everything But the Girl.
We did a lot of Cure videos with a great director called Tim Pope, right, who I then ended up working with in features. Right. But the real big change was that it brought me to the States and to the West Coast. I came at some point in, bit by bit, we came over here, did a Neil Young videos series with Tim Pope, and then one thing after another. I came with another director with a team of people, came to do one video for a band called Bananarama, who you may remember.
Absolutely.
Which migrated into another band for another video for a man called Robbie, no, I'm sorry, I forget, which anyway turned into a string of music videos, and we just ended up not going back. And so that was really the big kind of transition. In 1986, I set up here in the middle of the sort of height of MTV, and we just worked back to back for a while. Eventually working with David Fincher, I worked with him in music videos and did his first transition into commercials. And at that point, everyone was getting very interested in doing feature films.
And your first feature was The Lawnmower Man, right?
It was, yeah, with Brett Leonard, who was not from that commercials music video scene at all, but I'd been recommended to him. And it was a great, one of those really kind of one-off events. This was someone who came out of a deep knowledge of actually art and science, and who was connected into virtual reality and wrote this Lawnmower Man script around the idea of virtual reality. And it just hit at the right time, and a very, very cheap film turned into a big success. And then I went back to doing commercials for a while because we were getting a lot of B-movie, low-budget sci-fi thrown at us, which I didn't want to do. And then Alex Proyas, who was one of the contemporary great commercials directors, had The Crow, the script of The Crow. And that really turned into a phenomenon of itself, because it was the first film that really took an underground comic book source material, not only respected it, but put it in the context of a whole music connection, which very much connected. Alex Proyas had come out of almost exactly the same punk music interest and scene as I had. And so he put together something that was almost as much of a musical cultural event as it was a cinematic one. And then there was, you know, a lot of overtones and things attached to that film, but it ended up rolling into a lot of serious attention.
Now, we first met when you were doing the film The Terminal, the Steven Spielberg film, and prior to that you'd worked on Minority Report too. Huge films. And these Minority Report brings in a lot of art and science and related issues, and that's obviously something you've carried forward too with your interest in the group Matter that you currently direct, right? As a group of artists, scientists, engineers, and so forth. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the Minority Report and the Terminal, and then how that relates back to the conference that we're starting to develop and Project Lab and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I think it was actually The Crow on my resume that attracted Steven Spielberg to me for Minority Report. It was a kind of a dark subject that he wanted to explore. So a kind of combination of that and Fight Club and this kind of sense of stylized reality, I suppose, that we'd established in those films. But Minority Report was special because with a combination of the subject matter set in the future and Steven Spielberg's name and the buying power that went with that, and his particular interest in not creating science fiction but a sort of future reality. We engaged in a conversation with a big group of scientists, starting off with a think tank that went over a weekend, 2 days, sit down with Steven Spielberg and Scott Frank, the writer, and myself, and a small team of artists and a dozen scientists to really talk about what the future would look like in reality. Because I think what Spielberg really wanted to do with Minority Report was establish this idea that the audience would really connect with a future that they could say, this isn't fiction, this isn't something I can dismiss, I have to engage in the subject here, you know, this is something that might happen. And because it was dealing with, on a metaphorical level, the loss of civil liberty, and essentially, and you know, everything between, a kind of creation of a society that appears to be very benign and stable and then falls apart very quickly when there's a sort of realization of the rotten core. It was a task to sort of set up this world that one could believe in, that one could actually be attracted to, you know, that really looked benign. And so the technology was very important there, this feeling that that this is technology that we could see. You know, a cell phone is going to migrate into this kind of PDA. The idea of advertising, you know, Amazon on our 2D screen could very easily turn into this kind of immersive and invasive advertising, and the building of an entire world. It became very much a kind of urban planning task to set up the idea of a city from the ground up in the future, but set in a real space in proximity to Washington, D.C., with all of the sort of social layering that is already embedded at DC, with the added layer of this sort of futuristic vertical city. And out of that, we were carving a story. So it was, on many levels, it was a significant film for me, because it engaged us for the first time in the idea really of world building as a design project. And then secondly, as very much an art science focus as to how the future would really play out.
Well, it's interesting you used the word immersive, which was, you know, the Minority Report was 2002, is that correct?
I think so.
A number of years ago, and this has obviously become a huge interest of yours as it relates to production design, and the conference that we're currently organizing called 5D, the Future of Immersive Design, where we're looking at TV, film architecture, gaming, and so forth. And I find it, you know, you became an advisory board member 3 years ago, and we've worked on a couple of projects now, one being the Sound Oasis 3D sound project, and then John Underkoffler's Tampa exhibition, which was a gesture interface. And we're now currently talking about a Future of Light exhibition, and obviously the 5D. So all of these things, you know, I've talked, and we've both talked a lot about the future of a museum and what that looks like. In discussion in Minority Report, you're talking about, you know, immersive and the future of technology and so forth. So there's an interesting wrap that takes us to, I think, the 5D conference, what that means, what the future of design as it relates to the conference looks like going forward, right?
Very much so. Yeah, I think what we learned in Minority Report was that as we started using the new tools that we kind of had to use to really envision the future, it was very hard to design architecture 50 years hence using a pencil, you know, when contemporary architecture was being designed with 3D animation tools.
Right.
So we found by just going through the process of looking at how the future would look that we started to design differently. By the end of Minority Report, we'd established the first fully digital 3D art department.
You know, hold that thought for a second, because we'll come right back. I'm Chris Scott, I'm the director of the University Art Museum. I'm here with Alex McDowell, co-director of the 5D conference, and we'll continue this conversation in just a second.
The facts are in. California State University Long Beach is among the nation's finest universities. For the 4th consecutive year, the campus ranked in the top 5 public comprehensive universities in the Western United States. In 2007, Cal State Long Beach was named the 3rd best value among all American public colleges and universities. A survey by the National Science Foundation rated Cal State Long Beach first in the nation for the number of graduates who then go on to earn doctoral degrees in science and engineering. Offering full scholarships to high school valedictorians and National Merit Scholars, Cal State Long Beach sponsors the premier President's Scholars Program in California. Through superior teaching, research, creative activity, and community service, California State University Long Beach operates as a student-centered, globally engaged public university, changing lives for a changing world.
Welcome back. I'm Chris Scott. I'm the director of the University Art Museum, Cal State Long Beach, and I'm here with Alex McDowell, production designer, advisory board member, and the co-director with me on the conference 5D, the Future of Immersive Design. And before the break, we were talking about the digital design in the art department and feature films. But before we kind of get back into that and the 5D conference, I just want to talk briefly about some of the other projects that we have co-curated together and how that sort of leads into the conference itself. Alex was a board member, came on as a board member 3 years ago, and it was through Alex's contact with Martin Ware from the illustrious company in London that we did something called Sound Oasis, which we did on campus last October, which was a great success, which looked at 3D sound, immersive sound. And then just back in January, we worked with John Underkoffler on this gesture interface project for film, where John did a stylized version of this for the Film Minority Report. And we're currently talking about another project, Future of Light, and in all the conversations, we started this conversation about a year and a half ago around the coffee table about a conference and about design, about immersive design. And we're currently now just 4 or 5 weeks out from the conference that we've been working on for so long. And so maybe we can talk about that, about the conference, what it means, and how this positions the museum for the future and design for the future, and so on and so forth. So the conference takes place October 4th and 5th at the Carpenter Center. And there are 6 panels over 2 days with workshops, with a keynote address by Henry Jenkins, who's the director of media studies at MIT, who just finished a book called Convergence Culture, where new and old media collide, and he is going to be our keynote, to give our keynote address. But let's talk about the goals for the conference.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting, and it's very much come out of this conversation simultaneously really with the art science in terms of the visual arts and the future museum kind of discussion, is very much in parallel to what's happening in the industry in discussion with the future of convergences, essentially. I mean, we're all talking about the same thing, whether it's the convergence of art and science,
right, or
the convergence of engineering, technology, and design, or even indeed between different media across a whole entertainment sort of spectrum,
right,
beginning to go through a series of convergences which we're becoming more and more aware of. It's clear that there's kind of a central overriding question here, which is, where are we going next? And we know also, because things are changing so rapidly, that we can't accurately predict the answer to that. So I think what's interesting and most kind of entertaining and fun about this conference is that we actually are not there to provide answers. We're there to ask the questions. We're there to provide this forum that will bring together under the umbrella of narrative media, and we're defining narrative media as those media that engage with the process of storytelling in some form or other, in order to immerse an audience in an experience. So it's a loose definition, but actually it very usefully ties together film, animation, television,
right,
and everything that means now in terms of interactive TV and the mediated living room and all of those kind of buzzwords.
right,
Interactive media as gaming, as virtual space and the web, and architecture, which people don't necessarily think of under the same umbrella of entertainment, but architecture probably is the industry that has for the longest engaged in the idea of immersing its audience, of having the participants, the people using architecture, being immersed in a storytelling space, a space that changes their lives. And
we have a wonderful panel that deals with that, with Peter Frankfurt being the moderator.
Yeah, Peter Frankfurt from Imaginary Forces. Greg Lynn, who's a fantastic progressive architect, one of the most kind of vital architects in the industry, who happens to be based here in Los Angeles. They're the sort of center of a conversation that started with an exhibition at Museum of Modern Art in New York called Design in the Elastic Mind, and a project called New City, which imagines an architecturally mediated city in virtual space as a space within which a billion stories can take place. So that's a very interesting panel.
And you're moderating a panel, Design in Flux.
Right. Design in Flux is probably going to be the wrap-up.
The final, right.
But it's really talking about what is design. Is design as the translation of imagination into actuality, and design, narrative design, and immersive design, and the interlock between those two spaces, where when we design immersively, we not only use immersive processes, 3D processes, which are now available to us using digital tool sets, but we design a fully immersive experience, whether it's linear, passive experience for an audience in front of a film screen, or whether it's a fully interactive game.
And some of the panelists that will be on your...
Habib Zagapur, who is the senior art director at EA, who's been working with Steven Spielberg, is one of the real front runners in interactive media right now.
Right.
Rick Carter, who's just recently designed Avatar, which is Jim Cameron's new film.
Right.
Very, very progressive. Tina Schädler, who's an architect from Daniel Liebeskin's studio in Germany, who's moved into film, has worked on the Harry Potter films. And I'm forgetting somebody, but and then we have.
This is an amazing group of people. I mean, with some of the other panelists, with John Tonoff, who's putting together his panel, who's the showrunner at DreamWorks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. John Tonoff's come from an artificial human technology background, has come into animation and is really dealing with what it means to move into sort of spaces where anything can be imagined now. Right. In 3D digital animation and feature production. And he has Gore Verbinski on his panel, for example, who directed
the Pirates Trilogy.
The Pirates Trilogy,
right.
Who's one of the most sophisticated directors out there. So we're very lucky to have someone like him on this panel. And he is engaging both in interactive media now and in animation and in film. So he's somebody who's straddling all of these different media.
So, I mean, needless to say, over the course of 2 days, this is going to be one heck of a conference, I think, and it is the first time that it's taken place, and we hope this to be a yearly conference that takes place in Long Beach every year and sort of anchors the TED conference too, which will be here in March. But it's an amazing opportunity for students, for professors, for academics, for industry people, for people interested in the notion of design of all kinds to be a part of this.
Exactly. I think our focus is clearly on design. We're trying to make that be the central thing. We could say, TED Talks 5DCs. It's a very specific notion of not the academic intellectual necessarily, but the doing, the making, right. The imagination into the actual, and everything that involves. And the conference panels are extremely high level, and we're dealing with them on the level of that discussion of asking the questions, what is the future of design in this narrative media umbrella? But we also have a number of very, very interesting and exciting sponsors who are putting panels together, Autodesk and ILM, Disney Imagineering, who may well be bringing WALL-E with them, right. A number of great sponsored workshops. So we've got 2 workshop tracks and 1 panel track going through the 2 days in this great campus, and right here and very accessible.
Right. And it's an amazing opportunity, I think, for those who are studying design or fine art or film from around the Southern California region. We have a lot of Cal State students who are participating too, but all the other design schools around the area will be coming to campus, so it's an enormous opportunity for the city of Long Beach too to be involved in what is, I think, going to be a groundbreaking weekend and the leading edge of all of these issues.
Yeah, and it's worth saying it's not, although design is the frame, design is also the key that opens the doors into all of these media. So right. It's really very much for anybody who's interested in media studies in general. It's as much for the producer and the writer and the cinematographer and the artist, because we're all talking about the same space. Design is fortunate in that it can move freely and kind of cross the membranes between each of these media in a much more free way than many of the other crafts and disciplines. But by coming to this conference, we're opening a door into the entire conversation of convergence in media in the future.
So I think what's wonderful about it, there's, with Henry Jenkins being the keynote address, there's a little bit of theory, I think, that will be involved, and then there's a lot of practice and some workshops where people can do things, and so I think there's an incredible mix of activities that are going to engage, I think, a huge audience.
I expect to learn a great deal. I mean, I'm really, this is a purely selfish act. I just want to learn a lot of stuff here, and I think that if I can learn from it, we can all learn from it. We're all in a very fortunate position to be in this time and place to be able to do
And
that.
I think this, for me too, from the museum's perspective, is an adventure. It's not about getting the answers to these questions, but to see where this goes, to see where this leads in the future, and be able to be open to the changes and the future as it relates to all of these pieces coming together. And so I have to say, I think it's going to be a fantastic time for all those involved. But
yeah, I think it's the beginning of something that will evolve clearly, and we're really hoping that 5D kind of becomes a framework or a brand for something that may occur throughout the year in the same way as Project Lab does, as something
Right.
that we can keep folding new technology, new creative practice into, and investigate the new relationships that develop. And there's as much relevance as in the visual arts as there is in media entertainment and the professional design community, and in this very broad academic community.
well, in a culture that's continually dealing with remixing and things that are mashed up and things that are mobile and things that are all coming together, I think the museum would like to think that it's at the nexus of all of that convergence too, because the museums aren't going to be the same in 5 years, 10 years from now. And I think that just being a partner with you in this conference and the Art Directors Guild is an incredible opportunity for all of us to sort of map out a new future, a new territory, and it's uncharted, so which is a big adventure and I think a lot of fun too.
Yeah,
So,
very much so. I think that's what's exciting about it, is just
Yeah.
that we don't have the answers. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great place to be. We're ready
Yeah.
to jump off the precipice and find out.
Right. So for those of you who are watching this show, you can go to the 5dconference.com website and find out all the information that's necessary about the weekend. There you will find all the information about the panels, the panelists, the workshops, times, dates, prices, and so forth. If you have additional information, you can feel free to call the University Art Museum. We'll go to our website too. And again, thank you for joining us for another UAM at the Beach.